Welcome to NTTBF Presents Dynamic Duo. I am tonight's moderator, Christina Taylor. I am a librarian from Round Rock High School in Round Rock, Texas, the immediate past chair of the Texas Maverick Graphic Novel Reading List Committee, and the current social media manager for Texas Library Association's Young Adult Roundtable. And I'm thrilled to be moderating this conversation between the four of you. So we'll start off with an introduction of yourselves. If each of you will formally introduce yourself to the audience, your body of work, and tell us a little bit about the graphic novels that you're going to be showcasing tonight. So we'll start with you, Varian.
Sure. Although, a quick aside, Christina, I knew you were in Round Rock. I didn't know you were at Round Rock High School. That's like right down the road from me. So, like, if you stay there for like 10 more years, like maybe you'll be the librarian for my kids. Just saying. No pressure.
I can't promise that, but my co-librarian is also a fabulous woman as well.
My name is Varian Johnson. I'm the author of numerous novels, including The Parker Inheritance, that one there, The Great Green Heist, that one there, and Twins, which is my first graphic novel, written by me, illustrated by Shannon Wright. And I'll just say Twins, I've loved graphic novels. I've always loved them. But it wasn't until here recently, over the past 5-10 years, that I really began to read graphic novels for young people. And more importantly, my daughter began to read graphic novels for young people. She was a reluctant reader, I'll say. And she discovered Raina Telgemeyer's books and took off and loved reading graphic novels and just couldn't get enough of them. But we really struggled to find books where she could see herself on the page. There's so many great graphic novels out there. There are many out there that show people of color, but most of those show people of color as secondary characters. And we were really looking for something that really put brown kids at the forefront of the story. So I had this idea about twins. I'm a twin myself, 5 minutes younger than my identical twin brother. And I thought, well, maybe I could take this book and transform it into being something about just twins into something more, hopefully something more inclusive. And really, Twins starts off with twins, about twins. Twin sisters, Maureen and Francine. They do everything together. They join the same clubs or organizations. They even dress alike. But in middle school, everything changes. Francine pulls apart. She starts dressing differently. She goes by a short name, Fran. And Maureen really struggles with that. She doesn't know who she is without her sister, without her partner. So the book follows the girls as they're trying to figure out who they are. In the book, they end up running against each other for 6th grade class president, which causes even more drama, so much friend drama in the book. But the book is, the girls are surrounded by this cast of characters, both their family and friends, who are primarily brown kids, primarily people of color. And I thought that was really important when writing the book. But even then, I know with the graphic novel, writing it is only part of it. And I knew I wanted a strong collaborator to work with who could bring these girls, these kids to life. Someone who understood what it meant to be a Black girl, someone who understood all the nuances in going to how we look, how we act, how we feel, how we are. So with that, I'm really lucky to call Shannon Wright my collaborator on this project. I'm so glad she came on board with it, and I'm going to kick it off to her.
Thank you, Varian. I feel like I never get used to that whole introduction that we go through. And we've gone through it a lot. But yeah, my name is Shannon Wright. I'm based out of Richmond, Virginia. And some of my work includes, I did the cover for Betty Before X, the cover for Strange Birds. And I was the illustrator for 2 picture books, My Mommy Medicine and I'm Going to Push Through. And I am the illustrator on Twins. I also have a picture of them back there. But yeah, as Varian mentioned, we collaborated on this project together. It was a long time coming, but I adore this book so much. I literally just have like drawings of the girls all over my house and stuff. And yeah, it's about these two, and they're exploring middle school, and along with them exploring middle school, they're trying to figure out how they can become their own person at the same time, um, while creating boundaries and going through middle school anxieties and friend breakups and meeting new friends and having new class schedules and all of that madness that comes with middle school. And I remember going through middle school and just feeling like this is so much. I'm away from my younger brother, even though I'm not a twin. Me and my brother are a year apart, and at times we acted much like twins, according to my mom, when we were little. And so, not being in school with him, and I was always like his protector, I was just on my own. So, this book really speaks to me about having that sibling dynamic and just breaking apart and finding yourself. And I love it so much. I'm just going to do a quick flip through of how hefty and beautiful this book is. And yeah, Varian and I worked together on this, and a lot of times we mentioned how we really resonate with the girls. I feel more like Fran, and he feels more like Maureen in a lot of cases. And yeah, so this book is dear to us. It's a love letter to Black girls especially, but a lot of it is a love letter to Black families and Black kids, and just like kids of color who otherwise were never the stars in the forefront of comics, and let alone graphic novels. So I adore this book. And yeah, I'm going to kick it off to Lily. Boom.
Hi, I'm Lily LaMotte, and I just first, before I begin, I just want to say that I am so interested in your book, and I need to get it so I can read it myself.
Oh, I need to get your book too. I am like so behind on so many books.
Yeah, me too. But just like you guys, right? There are just so very few people who look like me in books, and so I wanted. Here's our book, and in my book, Measuring Up. And I just want to say, I love how gorgeous my hardcover came out. Look at that. And then, oh wait, I'm gonna do the Vanna White thing. Oh, they did the inside cover too. It's so beautiful. I love it. But like, so I mean, there's so many tropes, right, around people of color. And so I wanted to talk in this book a little bit about, yeah, some of it's true. There's a lot of parental pressure to excel in academics, which Cece also gets. But you know, we're more than that, right? And I'm hoping that people who read this book will see that, oh, we are multidimensional. And so basically this book is about Cece, and she moves to the US from Taiwan. And she has this amazing special relationship with her grandmother. And so when her grandmother's very special birthday, 70th birthday, which is a big deal, comes, she enters a kids' cooking contest so she can bring her ama to the US and celebrate. So it's pretty much it. A lot of cooking. I've heard from many people who've read it that you will get very hungry. And I will kick it off to Ann now.
Hi, I'm Ann Xu. I am the illustrator of Measuring Up. I have a background in illustration and comics, so Measuring Up is one of the first two graphic novels I worked on. The other one besides this is Shadow Life, which is coming out next spring, and it's a graphic novel for adults about very different subject matter, but still, you know, very it's great, and it's written by another person named Hiromi Goto, who wrote a beautiful story. But yeah, so this is my first graphic novel work that I've done for kids as well. And I was really interested in the script when I received it, because, you know, like beyond just being like a story for, you know, like the Asian protagonist and like seeing that representation in the book, I think beyond that, it's just a very well thought out and beautiful story about like how food and culture is connecting people and bringing people together, and the protagonist gets to learn about a lot of different like cultures of food, and she's discovering herself through that kind of thing. And I felt like it was just very thoughtfully portrayed. And so I was really interested in working with Lily on this. So I'm really glad that I got sent the script for it. But yeah, and I also like am really interested in like cooking competitions, like, you know, like Master Chef or like Master Chef Junior as well, because like it's so funny to see like the really little kids like cooking and everything. So I was really excited to like see that kind of brought into a graphic novel form. Yeah.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you agreed to do the book, because when we saw, we were a little concerned, like who can write, who can illustrate. Because when I was talking to Jin Yang about my book, he was just like, oh, I don't know if you should do this because it's super hard to illustrate food well and make it look appetizing. And I did it anyway, but I feel so lucky that we found you, because your illustrations are so fabulous. So I'm just going to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad that they came out well, especially because like food is such a core part of the story. So yeah, I'm glad that you think that they came out really well.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Well, in each of your introductions, each of you mentioned the importance of having protagonists that represent you, whether it is a matter of having people of color as the protagonist in the story, or if it is a matter of showing your passions on the page. And so my next question speaks to that. Twins and Measuring Up take two very different approaches to addressing the necessity for inclusion in the main character's world. And I'm asking if you will please explain kind of your guiding principles for those choices, as well as your reasoning behind them. And we'll start with Varian.
Sure. I wanted a graphic novel with brown kids. Is really kind of what it is, point blank. And I think we've been talking about diversity and inclusion in the children's book world for many years, and we made a lot of inroads in that conversation. But I do feel like comics and graphic novels are kind of lagging behind. Certainly the representation on the page and the people behind the books as well. So when I talked to Scholastic about doing this book, I was really adamant, and they were on board with saying, like, the only way that I want to do this book is if we have a woman cartoonist of color, and if possible, as hard as we can find, an African-American woman. Because I felt two reasons. One, I felt that was the best way to portray the characters on the page, but also it is incumbent upon us to get more folks in the stream in doing this work. And then so from that, it was really, the story's about two twin girls, right? And I love the idea where we let Black kids just be kids, and they go through their struggles, and there's some issues in the book too, certainly dealing with an incident at the mall where they're profiled. But by and large, the girls are dealing with normal problems. And I think that's very radical for Black kids to have normal problems. I hate that we are often forced to be the savior in a situation, or the exception. We have to be just exceptional to be normal. And I really wanted to kind of push against that trend a little bit. And I know that resonated a lot with Shannon as well, too. I know I am going to kind of throw this out there, Shannon. I love it when you talk about how you came to the book and how the weight of some of the other projects and that the toll it takes on you, but also just how the industry wants to see us sometimes.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. And this is just like a little story I've mentioned before, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I got hit up about twins, I got hit up to do another graphic novel, and it was totally fine. The script was fine. But at the time, so I went to school for illustration. So I was doing editorial illustration. And the thing about editorial is they love to pigeonhole you as a marginalized creator to do certain jobs. And so at the beginning of my career, I asked to do a lot of projects and illustration work that revolved around like covering Black trauma. And after a while, that really gets to you. It like weighs you down and whatnot. So fast forward to the script that came in before Twins, it was pretty heavy. And I thought to myself, I don't think I have the mental or physical capacity to do a 200-page book that deals with everything that I'm currently dealing with in like the editorial world. And so I turned it down. I nicely turned it down. I wasn't like, get out of here. But I was just like, hey, I just don't think I can take this on. And at that moment I was like, well, Shannon, there goes that chance that you just threw it away. And then Twins came in and I read the script and I read about these characters and I immediately fell in love because it felt like for the first time someone was actually looking at my body of work and who I am as a person, because I'm very vibrant. I'm out there. I talk about anime. I talk about cartoons all the time. I love stuffed animals. I'm always buying just like whatever. I'm just doing like goofy things all the time. And so when this story came in about these two Black girls just existing as themselves, going through middle school, going through like, anxiety, new friends and whatnot, I was just like, yeah, this is exactly what kids of color do. We experience heartbreak. We experience like going to a new school. We experience like family drama. And we're not always just defined by like how much trauma we can take on from the outside world and everyone else. So this book is just like very special to me because for one of like the first times, maybe not like the first times, but one of the few times we got to just have Black kids being kids. And like, that was it. And I was just like, finally, this is great. This is amazing. Why did it take this long? But I know I took this long because certain stories are very popular and sought after. But yeah, so so my guiding, I guess that's it. I feel like I got I don't know. I don't even know what else to say, but that's my little story about the need for inclusion and stuff. Just I love exploring stories where you have like a black kid and they're going through like they're having a hard math test. They're trying to figure out how to do their math homework, or hey, they're entering a dance contest and stuff and they don't know how to dance or something like that. Like we're so, like Lily mentioned, we're so multidimensional, and it's great to explore those stories. So
but I'm going to add one more thing, Shannon. I think one thing that you did remarkably was that we had an opportunity to showcase their Blackness in a way that felt organic. I think there are so many books where we got to stop and we have to explain, okay, well, this is what Juneteenth is, or this is why we do this with our hair, or this or that. And here we're able to see these girls with their hair braided one day and a different style another day, with their silk bonnets, with their mom and her headscarves, all these things that resonate with us as a culture, I think. And we didn't have to water it down and stop every other page to explain something for someone else. We can let these girls just exist without feeling like we had to, I don't know, soften things or just be unauthentic, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good point, Varian. Right? Because I mean, when it's in prose, if you want them to have braided hair one day and the hair did a different way, you actually have to type it into the prose. And now you really are stopping it unless you're somehow working the hair braiding into some sort of tension, right? Yeah. Which is, I'm sorry, I was interrupting.
No, you're good. I
think it's your turn, Lily.
Yeah, go for it, Lily.
Oh, okay. Well, I immigrated to US. I was very, very young. So unlike Cece, who is a newcomer to the States, I did come over very young. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about, the experience of being someone who was an immigrant to this country. And I had a bunch of things I wanted to say. there was something you said, Varian, and oh, I know why. Because I had a choice, right? I could have written this as a prose novel, or I could have written it as a graphic novel. And part of my reason for doing it as a graphic novel is because I wanted to actually have a book. When you're reading it, you see people, kids on the page who are not, you know, the majority, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that it was really important to do that. And then I was just thinking, Barry, when you were talking about this, that do you remember Hunger Games?
No.
And the movie came out, and the little girl,
Rue. Yep.
Rue, and people were like, "Wait a minute, why is she black?" I'm like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
How did you miss that?" Anyway.
Well, you know, people see what they want to see
mind-blowing.
sometimes, and there's always, you know, I don't want to derail, but like, there's this idea that if you don't explicitly state the race and like really go hard at it, that the reader defaults to a white character, because that's the way kind of the U.S. culture has brought about writing, a European style writing, this Western culture, and like we've really got to push against that. Graphic novels give us a great way to do that is organic to the story.
Exactly. The readers of all these readers of Hunger Games that totally somehow either missed it or knew it and then forgot it again. But in a graphic novel, right? It's on every single page. You can't forget it. You'll always know what kind of person you're reading about.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna kick it over to Anne.
All right. I thought that Shannon made a good point earlier that I think I always think about, like, in regards to my own work, which is like, you know, like stories about like pain related to someone's, you know, race or gender or something else that's like a part of them, versus just like a story where they just exist and it's like about, you know, there can still be pain, but it's not about that. Or it can be like a more lighthearted story. You know, I think there's definitely a lack of the more like lighthearted story, or like story that doesn't focus on like their pain or trauma related to like who they are, like as in terms of like the categories that people have or put themselves into. And, you know, that's not to say that there isn't a place for those either, because like I've certainly, like, my comics background, aside from the graphic novel work that I've done, is a lot of like autobiographical work. So, you know, if I'm just like thinking about like myself, then like, okay, there are like stories that I have to like write about in like a zine format, or like something else where it is like about like some kind of pain that I have, like related to like, you know, language or like being Asian or something like that. And so like I can write that, but then, you know, as time went on and I'm like kind of processing those things in my art and writing, and then also just like as a person, I think I ended up gravitating more to like the side of, you know, this is not necessarily something that I want to be mired in for, you know, the months or years that it takes to create a book length work, which is, you know, like, if I think if you're taking on something like a book or a graphic novel, then it needs to be something that you feel really comfortable with like living in for that amount of time. And like, I think for me personally, I was like starting to like step beyond that for my own works, which is really why I'm like also very glad to like have been working on Measuring Up, or like the other graphic novel that I was working on, which, you know, that story still has like painful things in it, but it's also like a lot of comedy and a lot of, you know, like the writing doesn't revolve around the trauma of like being Asian or something like that. It just like is a story, and the characters are just existing in it as cast members, which I really like.
And I want to just jump on really quickly. I think it's so great that we're in this format, and that hopefully young readers and maybe older readers will be seeing this, and they're going to see all of our faces talking about these books, because I think it's so important to realize that, you know, as a young person, I think you see yourself in a book and you see yourself in a certain way. When I was growing up, I read a lot of historical fiction and biographies. And I thought, oh, that's great. We were doing great in the 60s, but like, do we exist now? Like, you know, I love that I can see characters who I want to be like in stories today. And I can also see creators behind those who are telling the stories I want to tell. And me, you know, 30 years ago would have killed for something like that. So I just love that we have the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're definitely in a great time, especially in the past few years, and like hopefully even more continuing on, where there are just many more diverse creators who are able to like also just get into the industry and then continue making work. I think you mentioned that earlier as well when you were like talking about finding a collaborator for your book, but yeah.
So to some degree, each of you have kind of touched on this idea of the marriage between words and images that make up graphic novels. And Anne even mentioned, you know, finding that you can live within that space as you're working on it. So that brings me to my next question, as far as, will you explain, if each of you pairs that make you dynamic will explain your collaborative process? What worked, what didn't work, and how did you know when you'd gotten it right? Varian.
Oh, you know, how do you know that you gotten it right? That's interesting. I don't know if I've ever thought about that before. I will say, you know, Shannon and I had a very collaborative process. She read the script as I was going through it, all the many different versions of it. And then I would see and make comments kind of on some of the thumbnails along those times too. And there was really a balance of playing to our strengths, but also giving each other the freedom to tell the story and to be collaborators, to be included in the story. Like I know I was, and part of it is, you know, I'm trying to figure out how to write a graphic novel while I'm doing this, but I'm thinking through, well, how much information do I need to tell Shannon, and you know, how much do I need to tell her without being too, I don't know, nitpicky or too, you must do this or that, which nobody wants, versus being too open-ended and not giving any sort of direction. And I think we found that balance eventually. But you know, the book, you know, it took a little time to get there. Shannon always likes to talk about this hefty book of ours. I feel like she's kind of like a little jab every time. It's a big one there. It's 240 some pages. You know, it's a lot of stuff in there. But I don't know. What do you have to add to that, Shannon?
Yeah, in terms of collaborating, and I've talked about this just a lot, that Varian and I, we ended up like working really well together, and despite the fact like it took us a while to like get to this like finished product, we like trusted each other. And I think when you're collaborating on a project like this or like a graphic novel, you need to like trust your writer and trust your illustrator, and also just like communicate and whatnot. Varian mentioned this was his first graphic novel that he wrote. This was my first graphic novel I drew. So it was a lot of like learning. And since that was taking place, it was just like, okay, well, we're both learning together. Let's just get through this together. If something is unclear, I went to him. If something was unclear, he came to me. And we just like, you know, we wanted to make this as seamless as possible, because at the end of the day, that's what you want in a graphic novel. You want it to feel seamless. You don't want it to feel like fragmented. Like, why does this text not match the illustrations all of a sudden? And that comes from one, trusting and just keeping clear communication with each other. So I think we knew when things worked. And I think, you know, someone has said this before, like when like things start singing to you, like I know people have mentioned like when you're trying to figure out a name for a character and stuff, you'll know when that name just sings to you. And so there were definitely pages that when they were done with, I was just like, yeah, this is how it was meant to be told, or this is exactly how the spread was supposed to be laid out and whatnot. So I just that's how I knew it. And we went through a lot of edits. I feel like a lot of people either they do or they don't talk about just like how much editing goes into making any type of book. We didn't get it right on our first try. We went through like 13 like
there were 13 drafts of the script for sure.
13 draft edits of the script. And even with my sketches and stuff, I had to add in pages. We took out panels, we moved around panels. And it just it took a while, but like it was necessary for it to take that long. And I've also spoke about this, like when I started the book, my character designs for the characters were way different, and I realized that I didn't want to draw that way. And during like that 3-year process of us creating this book, I found a style and just like a way of drawing that felt right, and I think made the characters like sing, so yeah, it took a while, but we finally got here, and I'm very happy with these designs I landed on. So
I will say, like when Shannon was doing sample pages, like when you see something this is one of the pages she did. Can you guys see that? This is the a cafeteria scene. It's kind of like Family Circus, but it's like a treasure map where she's trying to find a clear space through it. And as soon as we had 2 great editors on this book, Nick Thomas and Cassandra Pelham Fulton, and Nick and I were working on the book. And when we saw this image, we were like, yep, she's the one. There was no question, because she really got what we were trying to say. But also Shannon took what I was asking for, and she added her own thought, her own process, her own pizzazz to it. And that's really what you want. Everybody bringing something and then something more to the table.
Yeah, you're trying to get all these ingredients together to make a dish. And then we're going to pass it to Lily.
That's a great segue. Nice job on that one. Well, my process was totally different from yours. I'm a debut author, and so my script had to be super polished in order to get an agent. And then we did a round of revisions with her, and then she sent it out a sub. And I was very lucky. I got a preempt, and then we had some other editors who were also interested in the script. So, but once we got my amazing editor, Clarissa Wong, we did another couple of rounds, I think, of revisions there. And then it went to Anne for her to draw. And then she sent me like the lineup of characters, and they looked amazing. So we knew that she was like the right person. Also, of course, when we were choosing illustrators, we looked at a whole bunch of portfolios. And when I saw Anne's work, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the person. Like you just knew from looking at her work that it was it. But of course, so I wrote the script, but I'm gonna go off stage and get something, okay? So let me see. Here it is. So I wrote very, very detailed instructions, right? Panel descriptions, long shot, medium shot, close shot, and I sent her a lot of photo references about things I wanted. But the thing is, like for this panel here, can you see that? I made tea towels as giveaways. So the thing is, right, I said I wanted to be a full page spread. I wanted to be puzzle pieces. I want CC to be in the middle with her toque and, all that sort of stuff. I sent her a photo reference of the Roboku because I make sure it's not just some KitchenAid. But the thing is, I mean, basically, these are just words, right, on a page. But that's where the genius of an illustrator, of Shannon and Anne, is to take my words that I wrote on a page and actually transform it into this gorgeous page. So
beautiful.
Yeah, that's gorgeous, Anne.
Yeah, thank you so much. I remember getting the script and like specifically for that page. Because like it's when you're like writing a script for that kind of thing, like you of course like have an image in your head of what you want it to look like. So it's kind of like trying to recreate that image, I guess, and like also in my own interpretation and everything. But yeah, I'm glad that you also think it came out well, Lily.
Oh yeah, no. I felt like we were like mind melding from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For like the process and everything of illustrating for measuring up, I guess, it was interesting to me because I was working on this and a separate graphic novel, and so like the two styles of scripts and like process I was going through were actually very different. For the other book, it was more like kind of loose and more written in prose so that I could kind of like put the panels and like page composition together in my own way, as opposed to this, which is like kind of working from like a pretty very tightly written script, which is also good in its own way because then you know what you want. And then I'm also working with Clarissa Wong, the editor for the book, and Erica, who was the designer on like kind of for like the art end of things, like making sure everything is looking as it should be. And yeah, and then as far as like the food and like everything else goes, like Lily mentioned, she did make like a file of reference pictures, which I found very useful for like kind of, because when you look stuff up on the internet, you can like, especially if it's like food or like cultural, like there's so many different versions of things. So sometimes you might like find a certain variant of it, but that's actually not the one that they were thinking of. So then having those to reference from was very useful. And then like for others maybe that didn't have reference, I would just like supplement with like my own, judgment or research, or just like what I know it to look like. Because like Lily, you're Taiwanese, right? And I'm Chinese, so there are like a lot of overlap in terms of those things, but sometimes things can look different. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the ones in particular is the bitter melon, because when you get bitter melon here, right, it's always green, that light green bitter melon, but in Taiwan it's white. And so that was definitely one of the things I would make sure, details I would make sure, it was white and not that light green one.
Yeah, there are definitely like a lot of specific details that, if you're not like from the culture that's like being portrayed, like you won't notice those things, but like it's those like little things that really make it feel like lived in and experienced by the characters. Yeah.
On that note, I think we kind of come back around to my next question here, and you each touched on it as we've been answering all of these, but I want to bring it to the forefront now. Why do these graphic novels matter to you? How much time did you spend on it, and why was it worth it? Varian.
Yeah. Important for all the reasons that we've been talking about, like you alluded to. But I think I'm going to try to think about how to say this in the right way. At the end of the day, I think all writers want the same thing, or many want the same thing at least. We want to be able to tell the stories that we want to tell. And we want to have the freedom to tell a wide range of stories and not to be pigeonholed with a certain type of story. I personally love that I wrote The Parker Inheritance, which deals with social justice issues and things along those lines. And I love that I wrote The Great Green Heist, which deals with kids trying to steal an election. That's a conversation for another day. And I want that freedom in my storytelling. I think we all do. And we're not a monolith, right? There's so many versions of how our culture can be represented, all of those being true, all those being unique. There's no single story. So I just felt it was really important to tell this story in a way that felt authentic, but also realistic and relatable. It's a story that centers Black kids, but it's a universal story. And I think most of our stories are universal. I guess I just really hate the idea that Black kids have to be ultra exceptional all the time, that they have to deal with this adversity or have to be the other or the chosen one. That's just a false narrative, and it sets ourselves and our young people up for failure. You know, we have a wide gamut of ourselves, and we need to see that in books too. And you know, it doesn't make a story any less to be about a certain thing. All stories are important. There's a need for all different types of stories out there. I'm rambling. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to kick it over to Shannon.
Okay, so I agree with everything Varian said. I think Twins matters just because it's a fun book. It's fun. I was thinking about this the other day, and I was just like, I just want more books that are just fun and comical and stuff like that to just be praised, because they're just fun and they make you feel good. I like stories that just make you feel good, and they matter as much as the stories that are like here to like teach you a lesson or like, yeah, stories that like really drive home like lessons about like race or gender and stuff like that. But it matters just based on everything we talked about. I'm trying to, we mentioned we spent like 3 years on this. I think it was longer than that, according to Varian, because
on my end, yeah,
writing it. And why was it worth it? I think it was worth it personally because I got to create a story that I fell in love with. I got to get better at comic making. And it was also worth it because I've recently been getting tagged in so many pictures of just like, especially like Black girls reading this book. And it really like has been the serotonin I needed, especially right now. And I don't know, every time I see like someone mention, hey, I got your book, I loved it. My daughter loves it. My kid loves it. My niece, my nephew, so-and-so loves it. I just get really happy. And it's like, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for first and foremost for myself. Cause I just love comics making. I love the craft of making comics and making books and telling stories. But that extra like, hey, this kid really resonated with it. It has read it 6 times and keeps reading it and is asking for more. Really, it's the cherry on top. So that's why it's worth it for me. So Lily.
Thank you. I mean, I've always loved comics. I mean, I remember as a kid when the Sunday paper came, that was like the only section I read. And just, you know, The Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes, Pearls Before Swine. I just find they're just super fun to read. And I think graphic novels are just not just for me fun to read, but just fun for every kid to read, right? And then I want to also talk about the thing is Asians, when people talk about Asians, right, they usually either think Chinese or they think like Asia's a monolith somehow, right? Like, but there's so many countries, and each of these countries have their very diverse culture. They're so different from each other. The food is different. Their customs are different. You know what I mean? So I put a little bit of that in my book. And then I don't know. I think I just wanted to write one, and also, frankly, I wanted to work with Gene Yang. And the only way to work with him was to write a graphic novel. Anne?
Yeah, so for me, like I got the script for Measuring Up in a time where I was already really busy with other projects, but you know, I I like looked through it and everything, and I like read what it was about, and I read through it, and I wouldn't take something like this like long project on unless I really could like feel very invested in it. I really just wanted to see the story come to life, and I thought I could have a really nice time creating it, like creating the art for it and everything. Um, you know, Comics making and art and everything, it's a very long and like laborious process most of the time. Um, but I really feel like the end product makes it worth it. Um, and then also like to touch on what Varian said earlier about, having just more stories in general existing for underrepresented communities. I feel like that's so true because sometimes I feel like the conversation about representation is like a little bit like skewed from what it should be, which is, sometimes people argue like, oh, like this character is not representative because of this, this, and this, or like that's not actually how this experience is or something. But, the truth is there are so many different experiences within the same community. Like, CC's experience in measuring up is so different from my experience growing up because I grew up in a community where there were a lot of Asian people. So my insecurities are different from hers, but that doesn't mean that, one of them is somehow not correct. They all exist. So the solution to that is just, making sure that more people can tell their stories or just create stories about different experiences and perspectives.
I was at, it's so important for, how we talked about mirrors, windows, and doors, right? And that is so important. I remember the first time, like, I love reading. I'm one of those kids when your parents are like, go to bed. And I'm like, I'm reading under the, under a blanket or something. So they can't know I'm still up. But it wasn't until I was an adult and I read Amy Tan's book. And I was like, literally the first time I felt like, oh my gosh, there are characters out there who kind of look like me. And like, it also gave me this perspective into my parents, because the fact that even though I'm Taiwanese and I was born there, but I immigrated to the US as a very, very young child, right? So my perspective is basically American. And they would do these things. And I'm like, I don't understand. So Amy Tan's book gave me like this window into that, into them basically.
Okay, like mirrors, windows, sliding glass doors. Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop's great line about how books can be, what books can serve as for different readers. And I think it's very easy for us to jump on the windows and sliding glass doors aspect of that, but mirrors are just as important, and I think often the prevailing thought for books that feature kids of color would be, oh, this is a great window to this other world for this white kid to read. This is a great sliding glass door for them to pull open and step into to experience this world. But like a Black kid or a Chinese or Taiwanese or an Asian kid or whatever kid picking up a book and seeing themselves in the book page after page and it's serving as a mirror is just as important, and I might even argue even more important, to make sure that we kids need every shot they get, and they need to be able to see themselves and know that they can do it, and seeing themselves excel on the page is a great reminder that they can excel in real life as well. They exist in real life as well. Off my soapbox.
I love that as you guys talked about the mirrors and all of the reasons why these stories are important to you and need to be told, and to show that cultures are not monolithic. One of the things that came out in each one of your answers was the joy, just the sheer joy of working on this project, how much you enjoyed it and what you personally got out of it. And so my last and final question is kind of rooted in that idea. We've hit on some very heavy topics, but this one is a bit more lighthearted and fun. and just bringing us back to the idea that part of what we need to see in that mirror is not just someone that looks like us, but us in various stages and our joy that we get to get out of it, and not just this heavy representation of us representing an entire culture. So, that being said, if your graphic novels were people, with what other graphic novels would they be friends?
That's good. I will say, well, I think Twins and Measuring Up would be friends first. I think, right? I think, let's see. I think Twins would want to be friends with American Born Chinese because Jean Yang is so cool. But they'd be kind of shy at first, but then they come up and hang out with Jean, and they'd be, oh, Jean's just like me. Like we're all cool. And Twins might see like sisters and like, oh wait, we're sisters, they're sisters. Maybe we could buddy up and be friends too. I'll stop there. I know Shannon has many other they'd be friends with everybody if it was up to Shannon.
Yeah. Honestly, twins would be friends with everyone. Because the not only like the two main girls, Marina, Francine, but there's Nikki, Tasha, Monique, Richard, Amber. That is the biggest friend group out there in middle school, which that was the one thing I was just like, do kids like roll this deep with each other? I guess. Who knows? But yeah, I think Twins would be friends with Measuring Up. I think Twins would be friends with Be Prepared. Twins would be friends with pretty much all of Raina's books. Babysitter's Club. Again, Varian already said Twins would be friends with pretty much everyone. And if not the girls, then the girls' friend group would be friends with everyone else. So, yeah.
I have to echo everything that you guys have all said. Definitely friends with Twins. Let's see. Also, Raina Telgemeyer's books. And I'm thinking Lucy, I don't know how to say her last name. It's Nicely or Nicely? Nicely. Okay. Her book Relish, just because they have food in common. I think also I want to say Roller Girl by Victoria Jameson, just because I love that book so much. And I don't know. There's so many wonderful books, basically. Like, I feel like graphic novels has like so exploded in the last couple of years. There's so many wonderful, beautiful books. I have a off screen there. I have a very large stack to read.
Yeah, I would have to echo pretty much what everyone else has already said. I would definitely like it if Measuring Up were friends with the Babysitter's Club because I love that series so much. I also just got a picture book actually from, it's not a graphic novel, but it's a picture book by Jillian Tamaki. I think, what is it called? Everybody's...
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the title.
Like Everybody's Kitchen or something like that. Yeah, that's not exactly the title. I do have it. I received it and I just can't remember specifically what it's called, but lots of food in there. I love Jillian's work a lot too. She does a lot of really great work for children's books, graphic novels, everything. So yeah. God, I love Jillian so much. The
Tamakis, Jillian and Mariko Tamaki, they are so great, right? And like This One Summer is such an amazing book. Like it is such like I teach. I know Lily, you went to Hamlin. I teach at Vermont College. I almost always make my students read This One Summer because it is just phenomenal, right? It's just great, a great story.
It's also really cool. It was also on my Hamlin reading list too.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Fantastic. Well, before I close this out, I'm going to steal this from a friend of mine I just talked to earlier today. He gives everyone the opportunity to do a 30-second shameless plug. Whatever you want to say to close this out. You could talk about your next project. You could, I don't know, pimp your social media. But 30 seconds shameless plug. Make your starting statement.
Okay, fine. Okay, Shannon and I, are we doing Portland together, Shannon?
Yes.
Saturday? Shannon and I are going to be talking again with a bunch of other folks from graphics on Saturday. with the Portland Book Festival. Twins is out now, supported from Barnes & Noble or your local independent. It's gotten some great reviews. Renee Watson wrote a great review for us in the New York Times, where she talked about Shannon's wonderful work in it. Yada, yada, yada. That's my plug, kicking it to Shannon.
Support the book. It's amazing. Blah, blah, blah. I also have to shout out my girl, Olivia Stevens. She has a graphic novel coming out next year called Artie and the Wolf Moon, which is about Blackness and everything like that. And that one's about werewolves. So it's just like, again, we are multidimensional. Now we get to see black kids and black people just be werewolves. So I love that. I'm always going to plug her. I plug all my like illustrator friends. Buy locally.
Let's see. I'm gonna say buy my hardback because it's so beautiful. I'll also say, and it was also just named one of Amazon's best books of November. But buy local, right? Buy from your local indie. I'm signing books at Third Place Books and at Brick and Mortar, and also. Come to my website and sign up for my newsletter because I am trying to build up my email list, and I'm going to be doing giveaways. Like I'm thinking like for teachers and librarians, and giving away some 20-minute virtual author visits and things like that on there. And maybe families. Maybe I'll do it families, right? Like if your kid loves a book and wants to like come talk to me for 15-20 minutes virtually. That could be a giveaway too.
Yeah, so my turn, I guess, by Measuring Up. It's available locally, online, wherever you want to get it. But local and independent, of course, is ideal, I think, for books especially. Supporting your local shops and everything. I have another graphic novel coming out with Hiromi Goto's writing next spring called Shadow Life. If you want to find me anywhere else online, my handle is Eppershand pretty much everywhere. That's EPERSHANND. Yeah, that's all I have.
Wait, Christina, are you going to go?
Sure. So I hadn't actually planned to until you asked me just then. Like Ann, my handle on social media is C as in Christina, E as in Elizabeth, Taylor 05, and I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And mainly my feed talks about all things library and library related. So I'm often promoting books, promoting library programming, promoting the Texas Library Association, specifically the Young Adult Roundtable. And if that's just my personal feed, but I'm also running a couple of other feeds for our high school library, which is at RRHS Lid, so we're Round Rock High School Library, as well as the Young Adult Roundtable, which is at YART, YARTXLA. And on that note, I want to say thank you to the North Texas Teen Book Festival. Thank you to the publishers Scholastic and HarperCollins for giving us this opportunity to discuss. And thank you to the four of you dynamic duos for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, that was so much fun being able to talk to you guys again.
Yeah.
Yeah.